are speaking with Hayley Meaden, a health and nutrition consultant and coach, and not the typical nutrition consultant and coach, although she's highly qualified in this domain and works one-on-one with clients, typically over, say, 6 to 12 months in duration, gets some amazing results for them. Hayley has come deep out of corporate heartland, and that is where we met her, working with humans and human potential as an HR manager for big brands like Asahi Beverages, Lion Nathan, British Aerospace, BAE. So she made a big transition from observing what wasn't working for humans in the places that they worked. And we had an amazing conversation. Tony, would you like to share something about the conversation?
Today is about really looking at health and nutrition and well-being from a completely different perspective. But from the perspective of, like, it's an ecosystem. So if we were only to think about changing our diet, but she introduces two domains that we should be considering first if we want to make those fundamental changes to our health and well-being. And that is what's happening for us in the social context, and then what's happening food-wise for us. And she beautifully brings those together and provides 5 fundamental approaches that you can take to make progress on your health and well-being, particularly for those leaders who are, under pressure, under stress, and highly competitive, complex workplaces that really define today's disruptive era. So over to us and over to you, Hayley.
Great to be here. Great to be here in the Sunshine Coast studio on a beautiful sunny day, talking well-being, work-life balance, leadership, and anything else that finds its way into our conversation. So, Hayley, you've made a few migrations in your career in the last few years, but we'd love to hear a little bit about what you do now in terms of what you'd call professional practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I did used to work in the corporate field, but then when I had my children, I really wanted to try and find something that I could do that would fit around my family life, as something that I was passionate about, and that's always been health and wellness. So I went off and did some training as a health coach. And now I predominantly work freelance. So I work with clients one-on-one and some companies as well in group programs, doing coaching normally over a 6 or 12-month period.
Right. And Hayley, there's also another string to your bow, which is really in the actual production of food and advisory around what constitutes food that you should want to eat that is good for you. I saw some packaging the other day that looked absolutely fabulous. So what's that little string to your bow?
Oh, yeah. So I do also work for a company that is making healthy ready-made meals and they're distributing them into most of our major supermarkets as well. So there's a really big movement around, I guess, taking that old view of what packaged food used to be, which wasn't very healthy, and trying to make food that, is very similar to what you might make at home without any of the nasties and preservatives and things in it. So it's, I guess, filling that gap for busy people that, need something on the go.
So, Hayley, our relationship goes back some time, but it did start with you and Paula. And I remember it was quite an interesting interaction because Paula came out of that conversation really quite buoyant and said, "Oh my God, I think I found a new bestie." And so Paula, what was that? And Hayley, interact with Paula around this.
Well, I believed I'd done a program of work for Light and Easy at the time, and someone that you knew very well was in that program, and he said, "I think you just need to talk to this person."
Yeah.
And I remember I just pulled off the M1 at Logan in Queensland, and I was heading up towards the mountain retreat, and I picked up the phone. I just knew this was the time, and it was girl love straight away. As soon as we started to talk, I just felt your spirit and vitality and energy. And although we were talking about a project, I don't remember anything about the project.
No. I don't remember what it was.
Well, it was the first time we engaged with each other working professionally, but it was really about the sharing of values and principles and what should work be like and how is it that we can create workplaces where leaders thrive.
Yeah.
That's what we connected on. But I think there were so many offshoots to that. And here we are 5 years down the track.
Yeah.
We have observed for so long, I would say my entire career, an unwell workforce that we tend to work with. And I mean unwell mentally, I mean physically, I mean underhydrated, not nourishing ourselves, not getting sunshine, not moving. And this is, as we work with more and more senior leaders, probably becoming more obvious to us. So that's one orientation that we're entering this with. The second is it's also happened to us as we get more successful and more busy. We, and I would say both of us, have experienced a challenge around our well-being, and we are literally clawing it back. So we are certainly not sitting here as perfect humans. We are sitting here as lifelong learners today, with some unhelpful habits, but we're definitely on a pathway towards changing them. And what great timing to have you come and work with us and explore and help us learn what it is to be well as a human first and as a leader second.
Yeah, well, where I'm at, I mean, it's a journey for me as well. Yeah. And even as someone who works with people on wellness, I don't have it right, and I have my moments in life where I'm doing things well and other times when it's really challenging. So at the moment I'm working part-time and raising 2 kids and living on a mountain and trying my best to balance my own health and wellness and trying to help others do that as well. But I worked with you guys in the past in the corporate world. So I think we share that view of, you know, the unhealthy workforce, whether it's senior leaders or, I mean, it's all the way down the chain, and how people are showing up and presenting for work, and some of the things that people could easily do to make it easier, better, more fulfilling. I think health and nutrition and wellness, and not just wellness in terms of food we put in, but also relationships and movement and some of those other things, that all encompasses wellness. So it's not just about food. It can be about our home life and our family life and all of those sorts of things. They're impacting on us every day at work, whether it's for good or for bad. So yeah, I think it's an area that if we focus on it a little bit more and people have more support, we could probably get a lot more high performance from leaders.
Well, I love what you shared. There was 2 words inside the way that you described how we are as human beings in the role that we do, and they were showing up. And something that Tony and I talk about is the body as a component of how you show up as a leader. And I noticed I just sat right up and put my shoulders back and I opened out.
Saw that.
Well, it's a part of well-being, because if I'm not looking after this thing, over time it actually does this, and that I can't do that anymore. And I suppose that that's what we encounter often in working with senior executives that are time poor, that are grabbing easy choices for food, that aren't moving their bodies, that are developing and cultivating really unhelpful habits that have them in this loop of not even knowing how to get out of that. And I'm really happy to say that I've also been in that loop, and I think I might have used that's it. The words clawing it back. That's it. But I mean, there's a point in time where you go, that's enough. And if we can help people navigate their way towards that, even by just tuning into reflecting on how is it that I am inside my waking to sleeping moments, and what is it that I could start to look at to make that different, that would be a great orientation for us today. But I also appreciate, Hayley, that we did meet in the corporate world.
Yes.
You know, and we didn't start talking about well-being. We started talking about how conversations happen inside organizations and what are some of the missing skills and practices for a major multinational that everyone listening would know. We won't use their name today. And bringing about a different series of practices for teams and leaders. And this is well-being, though, is part of the missing conversation. And it's maybe taken us 5 years to get here and go, hold on a minute, no one's really dealing with this as instrumental, key, foundational. Because if you can't get this right, it's really difficult to get your mood right, which is the other part of showing up as a leader. You know, the way that we're languaging and thinking about ourselves is infinitely affected by the way we're nourishing and looking after our vehicle. So it sounds like we're off to a great start to explore your world, Hayley. And perhaps we could start with an overview of nutrition. And what is it that we know about nutrition generally as a populace? And why is it that we know a lot or a little?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for most of us, all we know is what we've been told or how we've been raised by our parents, what we've eaten growing up. And for a lot of us, that cultural eating is embedded in, I guess for the most part, what we know, or what we've been told by media, social media, influencers, doctors. And we really don't seek to understand ourselves. I think with nutrition, we wait till there's a problem and then we go and seek out someone to tell us what the problem is. And then we treat that problem in isolation. So, if someone's got high cholesterol, they go to the doctor, they ask a question. The doctor says, well, here, I'm going to fix the symptom. I'm going to put you on statins or whatever it might be. And that is a Band-Aid over that particular symptom, but it's not looking at your life and wellness from that holistic point of view and what else is contributing. And most of the time, it's not a permanent state, and that can be influenced easily for most people. And most people I've worked with in a coaching capacity, a lot of the wellness problems are coming from non-food areas of life. So I sort of break up nutrition into two components. So one is primary food and secondary food. And the secondary food is the actual stuff we put in our mouth. And the primary food is all the other stuff that feeds us. So our relationships, our work, our partners, our sleep, our movement. So the non-food components. And for most people, a lot of their food-based habits are being driven by a primary food issue. So it could be that they're unhappy in their job. So that's, resulting in them overeating processed food or ice cream or sugar or whatever it might be. So really you need to address the issue of them being unhappy in their job. But that's not how we in Western society deal with nutritional wellness. We just see it as, the food aspect, and not even the food aspect. I mean, most of the time you go to the doctor, they're looking at the symptom and then, putting a Band-Aid over that symptom, not looking at, well, what is it that you're actually doing? And I mean, they don't usually delve into nutrition. They'll just give you a checklist of eat this, don't eat this.
Yeah.
Take some pills and then off you go.
So
Be well.
Look at that. I love the way you've introduced that, because what I listen to is that it's not just the food or the condition. You're saying, well, what about the social context in which that person lives in and relates in and is in conversations in, maybe that's a missing conversation in the diagnoses of conditions or even the treatment of conditions.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it usually is. And you'll find that if somebody's eating certain foods and their partner's probably eating, or the husband's eating those foods, the kids are eating those foods. So it becomes a culture within their life. But really, what needs to be addressed is the underlying issue. So if they're unhappy in their job, we end up spending all this time talking about, well, what are they going to do to change that? Then we look at the food. There's no point, telling someone to eat bucket loads of kale when this part of their life, they're not happy with that.
Yeah.
So I think you have to look at all aspects of wellness before you even delve into the food component of it.
Are your clients, Hayley, surprised? Because I was surprised when you talked about primary and secondary and food. Actual food is a secondary thing. When you think about nutrition, you think straight away, oh, it's food. Are they surprised when you start to focus on their primary?
Absolutely. They'll say, why are you asking me questions about this? And why do you want to know about this? And then after we've, finished coaching, it'll be, well, I didn't actually think that I was going to be talking about all those other aspects of my life, or we'll just end up delving into something that they weren't even aware of themselves. So whatever way it goes, it's okay. But I think a lot of people come into it thinking, okay, I want you to give me a list of what to eat, what not to eat. And that's not what it's about. We need to look at everything first that's going on in your life, and then we can look at what to eat, what not to eat.
Well, it's really interesting because then you're really diving into who they know themselves to be. And it's a far deeper exploration than let's just fix this up with a new diet. It's like, how do you think about yourself and how do you live your life, and how do you choose what you get up to day in, day out? Do you choose?
Yeah.
Or are you at the mercy of someone else's pattern around this? And why is it that you're not sleeping? And what is that thing that keeps you anxious in the evening? Is that all part of your practice as well?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because most of the time they can't recognize that issue maybe immediately. So, not sleeping, they might think, well, what can I do to make myself sleep better? But they're not looking at what is the actual reason why I'm unable to sleep. So, it ends up going down a lot of different paths before we necessarily get to, things around the food, the hydration, the sleep. And often it's basic things in life. It's not rocket science, but I think people have this view now because we're so overwhelmed with what diet's the best. You know, is it paleo? Is it keto? Is it vegetarian? And everywhere you look on social media, which is where everyone is, there's someone telling you something different and someone telling you that you have to eat, you know, all of these superfoods, or you have to eat this, or you have to eat that, or you can't eat that. So I think for most people, it is overwhelming, and a lot of people just, you know, will go for whatever it is that's in front of them that someone's telling them. But a lot of people don't know why they're eating the foods that they're eating, or they're doing the things they're doing. It's just that's what somebody, a guru, is telling them is the right thing to do. And I think that then links into this idea of, you know, intuitively eating and having a mindset around nutrition. What is it that you actually think you should be eating? What do you like to eat? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel not so good? And really looking and feeling when you eat something. So immediately after you eat something, but then, you know, 2 or 3 hours down the track when you eat something, because a lot of people are eating things that actually are not working for them, but they don't know what the difference is. So they're stuck in this habit of, well, when I eat this, it does make me feel bloated or unwell, or it changes my mood. But because I've been doing that for so long, they think that's normal. And it's only when you really think about it and focus on it and go, actually, you know what? Normally when I eat this particular food, 2 hours later, I don't feel great. And what if I didn't do that? What
you're illuminating for us, is, and I think it's a bit of a curse, because, you know, something goes wrong, we want to fix it. But we're too focused on fixing that thing.
Yes.
But what you're introducing us to is to say, well, yes, but that's not the thing that needs to be fixed. We need to take a very broader understanding of our whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
You know, how we live, how we interact with other people. And so just to focus on that one thing is never going to work.
No.
And I think that, you know, in our work too, we do something very similar in organizations. You know, when something goes wrong, they want to fix it. They want to jump in and solve the problem because, you know, that's how we've been trained to do it, right? That's the Western way of thinking. But what we have developed now is this notion of going, no, don't do anything. Just begin to understand the nature of what's going on around, you know, what's not working well. And that's what you're saying here. And I think that's a beautiful piece of coaching that you're demonstrating there. But what I'm interested to know is when you introduce this new interpretation of these two primary areas, or a primary and a secondary, how does that impact them? Like, what do they say? What does that open them to?
It starts to make sense for most people because they'll start to ask themselves questions about, you know, I thought the motivation for coming here was losing weight. I wanted to lose 10 kilos. But why do I want to lose 10 kilos? What is that all about? So, you know, that why, and spending a lot of time before you even start talking about solutions, just about the current state and the why, and getting to the real reason of why someone wants to change the way they are. You know, is it because they're not effective in their job? Is it because they've got an issue at home with their relationships there? Is it because, you know, they've had an eating disorder and, you know, they don't know how to, I guess, go about fixing that because of what, you know, you're hearing. So I think sometimes people think we're going to get into solution mode straight away, but we probably spend half of the time coaching in terms of the total time we spend together just looking at the current state and why, and then peeling back to the real issues. And then when you put in place solutions, they work for people, not just this sort of 3-month thing where if they cut out eating one thing, they might lose weight and feel better for a while, but it hasn't changed how they feel about themselves. It hasn't changed, you know, that underlying issue at home. And so, it's not about food. And I think that's the difference between health coaching as opposed to just going and, you know, maybe seeing a nutritionist or a naturopath or a dietitian and getting, you know, a food plan. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But some people do come to a health coach and say, right, just tell me what to do, tell me not what to do so I can, you know, get to that end point of losing that weight or whatever that goal is. And then, it's about explaining, well, that's not actually what I do. And looking at why they're really there and what is it that they really want to change. And a lot of the time with leaders, they're treating their body as separate from their performance. So, I'm great at my job and this is what I've got to do and this is what I've got to manage. And then we start to look at, okay, well, how are you treating your body over here? Oh, no, that's different. I'm busy, I'm under pressure. So there's always, in my mind, a connection, but people see their physical body as very separate from what they're achieving at work.
Yeah.
And those two things, that just can't be the way. They are just so connected. And if someone is, I guess, not doing the right thing by themselves in terms of wellness, then they're not going to be able to perform at work. Yeah.
What provokes me about that, Hayley, is that you don't get to see this happening to you if you're in it. That it's kind of gradual, and it builds up decade by decade as a professional, where you're asked to take on more and asked to achieve more, and there's more expected of you, that you just start to give away little pieces of your day unknowingly.
Yes.
For example, the alarm goes off and it's 5:30 in the morning. You roll over and it's on your, I'm going to call it supercomputer, not phone. And then the email is one swipe away from turning the alarm off, and that is the first thing you see. And then already you're programmed in for the day. Typically, you don't see sunlight. You head off to work. On the way to work, then you're dealing with phone calls and chaos already. Get into work, deal with what's incoming. You might grab breakfast on the way there.
Maybe.
You might grab a high sugary, high carbohydrate. Something that's not helpful to maintain fuel, energy, and brain. Have you had water, or have you grabbed coffee first? Who knows? Then you end up at lunch and you're looking for the fastest alternative, or our favourite, you're catered, and it's an unhelpful catering. We have a big complaint world about catering for the kind of work that we do, because most of the day we see people go up and down and up and down. It's just not good for brain work, and we know it. Then into the afternoon, where everything starts to dull down, another coffee to keep you going. Then after work, potentially something to alleviate that pressure. It could be a drink of alcohol. I love going to the Qantas Lounge in the afternoon. You watch everyone's patterns. You watch everybody's bodies. We call it the RSL sometimes. It feels like a glorified RSL, because people are just looking to escape their pain, but not even realising that they're in it.
All of their pain could be tiredness too.
Totally.
Hey?
Absolutely.
Everybody's fatigued and tired.
Chronically.
Absolutely.
But not even realising, because it builds up, and this just becomes like a normal thing.
And
it's when you go on holiday, you're like, gee, I'm tired. If you go on holiday.
And you just sleep for...
That's it.
So I think this is a beautiful segue into, Paula, you've mentioned the conditions in which we work and live in. But, when we get to work, most of the workplaces now are air conditioned. Everything's controlled. And so, the moment that I think about air conditioned, well, it's pulling stuff out of us. It's pulling moisture out of us. And so, Hayley, could you open a conversation with us about hydration? Why is it important to keep hydrated? So over to you around this, because it's something dear to my heart, because I don't think that I drink enough water, and I feel the effects of that. But because I'd rather reach for something to eat rather than reach for a glass of water, but I know that my body's wanting water. How does that work?
And look, hydration, everyone bangs on about it, but that is, I guess, the first place that we always start with people. And nobody drinks enough water. Nobody has hydration down pat and perfect. So that's where we have to start with people. And it is hard. You wouldn't think that it's hard just drinking water, but it is, because we've got into habits of reaching for other things. And I guess not recognizing, a call for water by our body, we think it might be a call for sugar. Or something else. We reach for a Red Bull or a coffee or whatever it might be, instead of reaching for water. So I think if people could drink more water, and I think also understand on those days where you are in a situation where it might be you've exercised or you're in an air-conditioned office, and you're doing things outside of the norm, or you're tired or you're stressed or you're traveling on a plane, you need more hydration than normal, and you need potentially to replace some of those electrolytes in your body. So I think everyone could benefit from not only drinking more water, but also putting some electrolytes into their day, because we've got, this mineral deficiency. Most people don't get enough salt, or if they do get enough salt, it's coming from processed food.
Is that good or bad salt?
Well, you need the salt that you're just putting on your food, as opposed to the salt coming in through burgers and
Right.
all of the processed food. But things like potassium are really, really important. 90% of us are deficient in potassium. So especially, I guess, living in Queensland, even on a hot day, you're going to be using more potassium, and you really need that in your body to stay hydrated. Some people say, well, I'm drinking lots of water, but I still feel like so thirsty all the time. Like, it's not, water isn't cutting it for me. And that's often because it's an electrolyte imbalance. So they need some of those minerals into their body as well. So the best thing to do is start off first thing when you wake up, 500 mils of water with a bit of sea salt in it. That will be a game changer, because you already start off getting like 2 or 3 glasses of water in without having to think about it. And for a lot of people, so I guess what I do, rather than saying here's 5 things to do, we start with one thing for 2 weeks and we just change that one thing because it's easy and it's simple, and then we bed that down before we move on. So the first thing is usually always the water in the morning, and that will change the way you feel for the whole day. Like you're saying, Paul, you set yourself up in a better state, rather than the first thing being a coffee, because that is dehydrating you further after you've had this sleep of, no water intake. So most people say, oh my God, I felt so much better just from having that big amount of water to start the day. And then you don't have to stress so much about, well, did I have, 8 glasses or whatever it was, because you've already got some in the bank.
And how much sea salt is a little bit of sea salt? Is it like a pinch?
Just a pinch. Yeah. And I think if you're looking at your diet as well, because most people, we are also looking at cutting out processed food. So people will often find when they cut out the processed food, they do have cravings for salt because they were getting a high amount of salt before, and now they're getting less. So they'll say, oh, I don't want to put salt on my food. But you're actually now sodium deficient because you've cut out all of that salt. So salt is so important for our bodies. Like, it's one of the most important minerals. It helps, I guess, us hydrate ourselves.
Yeah.
And that sodium-potassium balance is really important. So that's what electrolytes help us with as well. So for people that, say go to the gym or, in the afternoon, instead of just a water, having an electrolyte drink as well can be really, really helpful. But hydration is like number one thing that will make you feel so much better, just that one thing on its own.
And when you say electrolyte drink, all I think of straight away is bad things like Powerade. Exactly. It's exactly as an ex-athlete, that's what I think of.
I think you've got to be selective. So something like a hydrolyte or a specific electrolyte drink that you can get from a pharmacy or a chemist or something like that. And I'm not saying, I'm just saying have a glass of that, not live on it, but you will start to, I guess, feel just a lot more hydrated and less thirsty if you could have some electrolytes and start your day with that water with a little bit of salt in it. It is amazing. And people go, well, it can't be that easy. Like, that can't be the thing that's, there must be more to it. And there is, but that one thing on its own can be really, really helpful for people. I'm not saying don't have your coffee, but just have water before the coffee.
Excellent. So first thing in the morning, 500 mils of water, little bit of salt, and you're off and away to a good start.
But that's sea salt, isn't it? You're talking specifically
the good
sea
quality.
Salt. Right.
Himalayan salt or the sea salt.
Right.
It's really, really good. Yeah.
Great,
Beautiful.
Hayley. So then what happens for the rest of the day? I notice Sam that we work with always has this monster bottle of water that's always full, and then it's empty and then it's full again. She has a lot of water through the day. What's the best way through if we're sedentary, sitting at a desk, but then also if we're one of those busy professionals that's between meetings and you're not probably going to be carrying a water bottle around?
No.
What's the way through?
Well, I think Sam's idea of the big water bottle, that is a good one because you've always got it there. And say it's a litre bottle or 750 ml, you can see what you're drinking. So I normally say to people, you get a litre and then you want to at least fill that twice a day. So have it at your desk, drinking it between meetings, but also when you're in meetings, there's normally some sort of, beverage on offer. Or people will go and get the coffee to take to the meetings. So get the glass of water. And it's not that you can't have coffee at all, but coffee's an interesting one. And I mean, I love coffee. And I've had my own battles with relying on too much caffeine. And I think understanding what water's doing to your body versus what coffee is doing, once you understand what's happening inside of you, you'll probably want to switch really quickly and get it down to one a day.
Maximum, yeah. But I mean, in addition to coffee and tea and hot chocolates and cocos and things that often found in workplaces that we often see, there's the can of soft drink. Littered through everywhere. People walking around with cans and drinking that. Now, I think we're all aware of the sugar issue. I don't necessarily want to go in that because I'm no way an expert into that. But how could people begin to, if they realise that they've got a bit of a sugar addiction and they're having these crashes that we all know about? I mean, we certainly see it in workshops. Somebody has a Coke or after lunch, where it's high sugar, an hour and a half later, bang, they crash. The energy goes out of the room and it's really difficult as a facilitator to hold the energy. How the heck can we replace the soft drinks to something more natural like water? How would people go about that?
Well, I think the first thing is actually feeling what that is. So people not even changing straight away, just spending 2 weeks after they have that soft drink, really acknowledging how that makes them feel, and whether that's journaling it or writing it down. But have the soft drink. How do I feel immediately after it? Probably feel pretty good. And then an hour or two later, being really honest with yourself about how do you feel. And normally people need another one or they need some other kind of sugar. So it becomes this cycle of just constantly reaching for the thing to get us through.
Right.
And that's what we're doing to ourselves. We're trying to get through the day rather than treating our bodies as, the amazing vehicles they are, fueling them really well and then expecting them to perform. We're just constantly throwing stuff at them and then trying to run them on empty. But I think what I try and do is not cut out everything. So if someone's on 4 cans of Coke a day, I definitely don't say cut out 4 cans of Coke a day because I know that's not going to happen. That's not sustainable. So I would say, okay, we're going to cut that in half. We're going to go 2 cans of soft drink. We're going to replace the others with water and we're going to just see how that feels. And for those 2 weeks, you're going to still have your soft drink and then actually write down how it made you feel a few hours later. And then we can see how it changes because people need to want to swap things out. There's no point me saying you need to have 8 glasses of water if someone really loves soft drink. And sometimes it's not always about completely cutting something out. If you can get someone, down to 1 a day, that might be really good for them. That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
So it's not about deprivation. And it shouldn't be, hard or a struggle or they feel like they're depriving themselves. And it could just be swapping in something else for the time being. So we could start with water, but we put a little bit of lemon or some kind of flavoring into that water because some people will say, well, I've been drinking soft drink for so long. Water to me just doesn't have, I don't like the taste or I can't do it. But it's, again, a habit. So once you've, done something for a few weeks, your body will start to get used to it and like it, and then you'll be able to do it. But, day one is often pretty hard. So I think, healthy swaps is another thing that we look at. But, a lot of the time when we're craving sugar, that message from our body is actually that we're dehydrated or that we need protein. So people will say, well, my body was telling me to have sugar and as soon as I had that sugar, I felt great. What your body was actually telling you was that you needed water or that you needed protein because you're actually hungry. So if you eat, say a protein-rich food or you drink water and you see usually all the time one of those things will work. The sugar will work, but it's only a temporary fix. And also it's putting your body into this constant fluctuating fight or flight mode. That's what the caffeine does. I mean, it does work. But what it's doing on the inside is, it's sending a message to your brain. I need you to produce more hormones. Those hormones are adrenaline, cortisol. So, your pituitary gland says, right, let's give some more of those things. That's why you get that boost because it's adrenaline. And then that only lasts for a certain amount of time. So when you're having coffee throughout the day, the message you're telling your body is fight or flight constantly. I want you constantly stressed. So you'll go along and then fight or flight, go along, fight or flight. And that's why at the end of the day, you're so tired. It's not just all the coffee, but the coffee has just, I guess, exhausted your body from constantly having to be in that fight or flight.
So, Hayley, I'm going to pitch something to you, and if you could put this together, because we actually see this a lot with leaders. Okay, so just from your description of, dehydration and sugar, I'm going to throw something at you. So what we observe, we observe people, or particularly leaders, are dehydrated. They're not getting enough water. They are sleep deprived. They're probably an addiction to, in an unhealthy way, to foods that are quick and fast and probably full of fats and carbohydrates, probably the wrong sorts of fats, and they're not sleeping well. Like, what's that a recipe for?
That's probably a recipe for huge amounts of fatigue and adrenal fatigue. Look, a lot of corporate, a lot of leaders are suffering adrenal fatigue and don't know it, but adrenal fatigue is also pretty easy to fix. And it's not that difficult.
Can you talk a little bit about what that actually means, adrenal fatigue? Like, what will the feelings be? What will that predispose them to do or not do?
Symptoms.
And how would you know?
How would you know?
Because I think, like I said, it creeps up on you. How would you know if you potentially were at risk of this?
Yeah, so all of the things Tony's already said, if you're reaching for sugar, if you're constantly tired, if you find that, you can get through the day, but then when you go on holidays, you're, sleeping for long periods of time. If you're really pale, if you feel lightheaded, if you've got low blood pressure, sometimes people's hair's falling out. All of those things are signs by your body that something is under stress. So, look, those symptoms are pretty general and fit most people. Most people who are in the corporate world, no one's saying I'm not tired. I think nearly everyone I've ever spoken to is saying the number one thing is can't sleep and I'm, too tired. So that's how adrenal fatigue will start to present, and we are fixing it by the sugar and the caffeine, and so we are just fueling it further.
Well, I was also fascinated, Hayley, to hear about you refer to proteins. And look, if I can't get anything else right, the one thing I do get right is my diet. But
You're
one
the queen
thing,
of it.
I am so rigid about it because I can't control everything else. I can control that. But I'm such an advocate for understanding what constitutes protein. But I am shocked at how many people do not understand what kinds of things we can integrate into breakfast, lunch and snacks that are proteins. Could you take us on a run through what we might be looking to introduce to our diet during the day that would constitute a protein that, when coupled with water, give us the best start to starting to turn our nutrition story to the positive?
And could I add another one to that too? Is, for us personally, but what about in those meetings and conferences that we consistently go to, where it's full of white bread and sugar?
And chocolate brownies.
And chocolate brownies, So we'd love to get your ideas on, what would be a healthy replacement for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think protein's an interesting one because most people are not getting enough protein, male or female. And normally when I do health diaries with people and we look at protein, people might only be getting like half of what they actually need in a day. So I think that's also a contributing factor, that you're not putting enough of the good stuff in, and you are, I guess, eating what's on offer, which is carbohydrates. And not that we don't need carbohydrates, we certainly do, but they are treated by the body the same as sugar.
Right.
So a carbohydrate goes in and the body says that's glucose and it starts to use that as energy. Whereas if we can shift, I guess, our body to using a little bit more fat and not relying so much on the carbs and fueling with enough protein, we will not be as hungry and we will not, be trying to reach for the sugar-rich food. So if we were a lot of people, I would normally double their protein.
So protein, what sort of protein would you advocate for?
Yeah, so it could be really good quality meats, nuts, seeds, and I know it's hard in meetings because you've got a lot of other things on offer, but it might be the case where you're going to, prepare your own food or go out and get some healthy snacks on the weekend and take those to your meeting instead of just accepting what is on offer there. So I think if you can always think of each meal, and it could be as simple as a couple of hard-boiled eggs. Most people will say, 10 o'clock, I'm so hungry, and I say, well, what did you have for breakfast? 2 pieces of toast. Now, toast is just, it's really just like eating air. It's not doing a lot. It puts some carbs into your body. They're treated as sugar, and then you will get that 10 o'clock, I need to eat, because it's your body saying I want protein. So what I would normally do if people are really addicted to the bread is not say cut out the bread, but put some protein with that. So it's
like
not
avocado,
about
something like that.
Yeah, and it could be boiled eggs, it could be some meat, it could be some nuts,
Yep.
It could be like chia seeds or something like that as well. So if you're having eggs on toast, that's better than just having toast in the morning, and you'll find that you can get through until lunch, or that you don't have that extreme craving, because sometimes when we get the sugar craving at like 10 o'clock, or the caffeine craving, it comes on pretty quick, and you've got to fill it really quick. So normally if you've got enough protein, you find that, everything's just more balanced, and you're not sort of at this extreme level, because your body is not in fight or flight thinking, quick, give me something to just fill the gap. So, increasing protein, increasing hydration, trying to get the sugar under control.
So, it's funny working with some younger folk. It's always fun when you bring in the chocolate brownie. Everyone's like, yes, they're here. Is there a replacement that's equivalent, that's healthy for you, that feels like you're not missing out?
Yeah. Healthy swaps I'm a big advocate for that. So it's not cutting out chocolate, but there are lots of healthy, raw, dark chocolates that are fine in moderation. You still do have to be a bit careful that you're not eating that to extreme, because that's, another thing you can get addicted to, and also your body is going to be in that same cycle. But you can make your own brownies with sweet potato or black beans and dark chocolate, and they are delicious and taste, just as good as the unhealthy ones.
Wow.
But, that takes a bit of time and it takes a bit of effort. So I think also prioritizing food, because people always say I don't have enough time, and no one does. No one's got enough time to do everything. But thinking about what are the things I'm going to face that week at work, and then, preparing. And so maybe you do need to spend a little bit of time on the weekend just having a snack bag and having some things at work that you can reach for when you're going to get that craving. Because if there's nothing there, you are just going to reach for, the unhealthy chocolate.
Things like protein balls. You see them around in lots of counters these days. And sometimes I look and I think, is you really a protein ball? And what's in you? Because it's now hidden inside a ball.
Deep fried.
Look, I mean, I'm a little bit skeptical like you, and I think the key is what you said. You really do have to know what's in it. Often they're filled with a lot of sugary dried fruits, which are not ideal in excess. In saying that, they're often better than what most people are reaching for. So the muffin or the cake, if you're having a protein ball, and look, usually they've got dates or maple syrup in them, that is, such a so much better choice for you than eating the processed food. So I would say to people, if that's an acceptable healthy swap for you, definitely have that. But again, have it in moderation. Don't, have 20 protein balls in a day. And often they don't. I mean, they call them protein balls, but when you actually look at them, they don't have that much protein in them, because they're full of a lot of dried fruit. They will have some nuts. So again, you're probably better to make your own, or really just read labels and find ones that, look at the protein per serve and actually see what it's got. And if it's, 5 or 10 grams, then that's probably pretty good for a snack. But sometimes you look at it, it's like, 1 gram of protein, because it's all full of just sugar. So again, you will, with the dates, it's a better choice because it's a natural food. But again, you're going to get that spike still. So you're still better trying to get a pure kind of form of protein. Just a handful of nuts would probably be a better choice than a protein bowl.
Hayley, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm one of those leaders who has in the past suffered fatigue, maybe chronic fatigue, adrenal issues as well. So it resonates well, connecting, my social context and what was happening for me at the time when I experienced that, and then a shift in diet, which shifted my sleeping patterns. It shifted the conversations that I was able to have that wasn't available to me, when I was, in fatigue state. It's quite an unusual environment, or a foreign environment for us human beings to be cramped up 5-6 days a week in an office, for argument's sake, in air conditioned, where there's very little greenery, very little natural environment, and it all becomes so life in a shoebox. But share with us the importance of fresh air, outdoors, sunshine, and how does that aid and help us to overcome, some of those conditions and some of the, some of the fatigue kind of conditions that we find ourselves in.
I guess we've all heard about, sitting is now bad for us, and
Yeah.
officers are trying to encourage us to move. And that just really goes back to who we are as human beings. So although our lives have changed and the way we eat has changed and the way we work has changed, our actual biology has not changed. And we are, upright mammals. And we used to spend 60% of our day hunting, gathering food. And now we spend probably 80% of our day sitting, if not more, because we're sitting at work and then we come home and we're sitting. So there's, a multitude of things that does to us physically, but also, I guess, that fatigue. If we're not moving, blood's not moving, circulation's not happening, you can't get oxygen into your cells. So, you do start to get, I guess, the feelings of fatigue, but also some physical things happening, with hunching and sore backs, sore legs. And also it's a bit of a case of, if you use it or lose it. So if we're not maintaining muscle in our bodies, you will lose it. And then that's going to contribute to more injuries. You're not going to be as strong. You're not going to be able to, do the things that you once could do. And people say, well, that's just a part of getting old, but it's not. So doing some sort of resistance exercise, no matter how small it is so helpful. And trying to get some movement into your day. So I know most people will say, I don't have time to go to the gym. That's fine. A lot of us don't. But there's some simple things you can do by, if it's a lunchtime walk, or if it's, even at home, just having some exercises that you do, or it might be, engaging a personal trainer and actually like prioritizing that somewhere in your week to just get a little bit of resistance exercise in, because that's the other thing that's really important. And it is already leading to a lot of health concerns for people, just the complete lack of movement. And if we think, that's what we're designed to do and we're not doing it, I think that's a really good reminder for people as well, that we're actually meant to be outdoors a lot and getting fresh air and, being in green space, not being in concrete. That does a lot of things to our mental health and our energy and I guess how we just, feel about ourselves. Not seeing sunlight, it's another one that can affect your mood a lot. And a lot of people aren't getting any sunlight in a normal day. They're seeing nothing because they're not leaving the office, and it is really hard to do. So I think all of those things need to be integrated into this sort of overhaul of people's health and wellness, but it's trying to do it slowly. So embed one thing, try it for a couple of weeks, feel comfortable that you can maintain that, for a lifetime, not just for 3 months while, you lose weight or whatever it might be. And then we look at what's the next thing that we can do. And I guess that's why health coaching goes for a minimum of 3 months. It normally goes for 6 months because you need that time to embed changes forever, not just a quick fix so people see an immediate result, but things that make you feel better over time.
Yeah, I mean, that duration, we see the same thing in organisational change, which is actually, or cultural change, which is actually helping people to reinvent themselves in the cultural context that they exist in a workplace. So it does take that amount of time. We really hear that. But, what I'm putting together, Hayley, is that I really get, the drift of being a human, over the past 4 million years. 300 years ago, we didn't have Coca-Cola. It could have been something else, or, some other soft drink anyway. But, all of these additives, the industrialization of food and chemicals and, what's added into the food and the high saturation of fats and sugars and salts that are in food now, and our mindlessness around that when we do become fatigued, it seems like a vicious circle.
Yeah.
And, if there was one thing that you could offer, leaders out there, people who with a huge amount of responsibility and accountability for people's well-being as well as their own, what would it be?
Look, I honestly think just simplifying it and taking it back to the basic level. So I think most people would benefit if they just took food back to simple things like their grandma used to eat, like their grandma used to cook: meat, fish, vegetables, fruits, nuts. If you ate that for 2 weeks, you would probably be amazed. If you cut out the sugar, all of the packaged food and the processed food, so just eating food in its, natural state that hasn't been through 10 processes to get to you, I think that people would notice such a difference in their body, their energy, how they feel, their mood. And it isn't that complicated, but I think we're really good at overcomplicating it and making it seem like, it has to be this hard process that, we need to eat 30 superfoods and we need to be buying all of this stuff. And people do feel that. They feel like, that they go out and spend all of this money on all of these things that they're being told that they have to have. But yeah, paring it back, making it as simple as possible and just starting there. So just pair, if you can pare back the food to just those things, real food, then you can start adding in some other things.
I love this idea that just start with one thing.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about food, but then earlier today you talked about water. So for 2 weeks, wake up 500 mils straight down the hatch and then get that water bottle on your desk.
Yep.
What about movement? What would be something that people could start to institute if it wasn't radical, but just for 2 weeks they could try something different? What would be something that you would suggest?
Yeah, well, look, I guess it depends on the person and finding something you like to do. But I think just some basic stretches and just going for a walk, whether it's before work, at lunch, or even at night, stick in your headphones, find half an hour where you can just, go off and just walk. It's not anything too strenuous. Or just, getting up from your desk, doing some stretches even before work. I mean, there's no point, telling people to do yoga if they don't like doing yoga. So normally when we talk about movement, I find out what is it that people like to do. Are you the kind of person that likes to go box at the gym, or, are you the kind of person that likes to go to a yoga class, or are you the kind of person that likes to go for a walk in the forest? So whatever that thing is for you, just try even putting it in there 2 or 3 times a week and seeing if you can maintain that, and just being conscious of how much have I moved today? How much have I actually, eaten in terms of protein today? How much water have I drunk today? I mean, that's what I do. If I'm starting to feel really crummy in the afternoon, I think, okay, how much have I moved today? What have I eaten? And there's always something there that, either I haven't eaten or, I haven't had enough protein, or I've been sitting in front of a computer, and just, I guess, trying to tune into what is the cause of that feeling. And maybe treating ourselves a whole lot nicer and actually saying, look, I'm actually worthy of wellness, and that what I put in my body every day is the most important thing I do as a leader, because that influences how I feel, my mood, how I look, how I present, all of those things, and prioritizing it rather than it seems to be most people have it right down the rung. Like there's all these things that are important in life, the job, the career, the boss, the kids, everything, the stuff, and then food's right down here. And if we could switch that up and say, actually, you know what, food is so important. And I try and say that to myself, like, this is the most important thing I'm doing in the day. And have I done the right thing by myself today? And we all have days where we don't. And that's okay. And not getting too hung up on what we have done, but thinking about, okay, well, what am I going to do to change it? Don't worry about, what you did yesterday, or if you fell off the wagon, or if you didn't move, or, it's not being too strict about it as well, but it's really thinking about how much did I eat and drink? Because for most people, I think writing it down is really helpful, because they'll say, yeah, I drink a lot of water. But then when they actually write it down, they go, oh, maybe I don't, because it is a mindless thing that we tend to do. So I think if you are happy to just keep a little notebook and just jot down what you're doing and then how it made you feel. I drank a big glass of water when I got up, and then how did I feel 2 hours later? Or I had, 2 coffees because I felt I needed it, and how did I feel 2 hours later? And then just starting to have a look at, connection between those two things. What I put in, how did I feel? Or what was my mood like? Because it presents in the mood as well.
And that for us is that fascinating connection point between our practice, because we are constantly working with leaders to tune in to the mood that's present for them. But so often they're not tuning into the fuel and the hydration as a component of that. And no wonder they actually make it harder for themselves by not doing those two things. And they say, oh, I'm not very good at this thing, or I'm constantly provoked. Well, hold on a minute. Are you looking after the vehicle? So I suppose it's a call to presence is what I'm hearing. I heard you say mindful a couple of times. So the practice of mindfulness and being in tune, caring for ourselves, loving ourselves, and recreating ourselves doesn't mean having to leave our job or having to make any radical change. It just means let's try something different. Let's get in a new experiment for a couple of weeks and start to see what the feedback is. And if we can constantly do that as leaders and learners, then we start to cultivate a different kind of teaming and organizational response to it.
Yeah, but there's an interesting thing around all of that. For many leaders that they're so focused on achieving results, and that's a good thing in some way, but they often, as you say, Hayley, and what we observe is that they neglect themselves in doing it. They become bits of martyrs to the cause. And, everybody else can see that, but they don't see it. But the point is with all of this, with any form of self-development or a shift in diet, shift in habits and behaviours, is that nobody else is going to do it for you. That rests with, that is our own responsibility. And we see a lot of excuses in this space. Oh, well, I got too busy and I didn't do it and didn't do that. But what we're starting to realize is that the consequences are so much more greater than any excuse that can be given. Because often they don't see the impact that, their fatigue has on their teams. Yeah. Because you can back your bottom dollar if they're fatigued, their teams are probably fatigued. So it is, Paul. I absolutely agree. It's a call to presence. And the more that we can call that presence to leaders, then we're doing a good job. And sometimes it's quite provocative too. But in the interest of well-being and health and safety and teams teaming well together, I really do believe that health and well-being and what you've contributed today is a great leap forward for us. So, and there's been an education for me.
Hayley, if I were a little bit stuck thinking, gosh, I feel so disconnected from myself, I don't even know where to start. And I would even say I've gone through this. What would be maybe 5 things that I could ask myself that would have me start to tune into what's going on? Because I'm so far away from my natural self. I feel like a robot. I show up and I do it, and I show up and I do it. How do I start? Where am I going to go?
I think the first place to start is by asking yourself, when you're doing certain things in your day, how is it making you feel?
Okay, so what certain things would that be?
Writing down, when I eat this particular food, how does it make me feel? When I have coffee, how does it make me feel? When I drink water, how does it make me feel? And actually sitting in that, not trying to change anything, just being honest with yourself about how that makes you feel. What am I actually eating? And I think starting with a food diary is always a good thing to do, because that's what I normally ask people. First thing is, we fill out a 7-day, what has that person been eating? And most people don't realize until they look at it on a piece of paper. So if you can actually ask yourself, what is it I'm eating for breakfast? What am I snacking on? What am I relying on to get me through the day? What are some things that I am not willing to give up? What are some things I know I've got to give up?
So it's really 2 columns. I know I'm getting into practical stuff here, right? But what am I eating? What am I drinking? And how does it make me feel?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. What's the next step?
Writing it down.
Yep.
And then I think just sitting with that and acknowledging what we're actually doing. So a big part of it is actually owning up to what's happening, not trying to say excuses, as Tony mentioned. Actually really owning it, and then how much do you want to change that?
So could I make that assessment myself? Could I look at that and go, actually, every time I felt bad, I had blah going on? Or should I also be monitoring my sleep in that? Should I be doing that in that 7-week view?
Absolutely. And looking at, I guess, the number of hours of sleep you get, but then, what's that quality like? Are you waking up in the middle of the night? Are you doing emails? What's happening before bed? What's the first thing you do when you get up? For most people, it's, they're on the computer right up until they go to bed, and then they're right with that phone, emails straight away. So looking at what's going on before and after that. And look, you can make some changes on your own, but it's often better to have someone help you move through those things. And I think for most people, it's just having someone hold them accountable. I normally am not there telling people, you must do this, you shouldn't be doing that. It's just checking in with them. And once we make, I guess we come up with some things that we're going to try, it's checking in and saying, how have you gone with that? What's working, what's not? And look, not everything works. Some people try things and go, look, that just isn't going to work for me. I can't get that. I don't enjoy doing that. It doesn't make me feel good. So then we'll switch it up a little bit. So it's having someone that you can go back and forth with rather than feeling like you're in there on your own. And if it all goes pear-shaped, people tend to give up. So it's like just accountability.
Well, I had a great conversation with a coachee this week, and this person falls off the wagon a lot. They get a pattern and then they fall off, and they get a pattern and fall off. And I can tell you the one thing that works for him over everything is someone else being there early in the morning to hold them accountable to going to the gym.
Yeah.
And when that one thing happens, the whole day is good.
Yeah.
When that one thing doesn't happen, the whole day is not so good.
Yeah.
And he knows it. But without that social accountability, it starts to fall to pieces.
Yeah.
So I love that you mention it, because it shouldn't be discounted.
No.
Yeah, awesome. And anything else that we might want to be thinking of with our baby steps if we're feeling disconnected from ourselves? So we've got the diary. We're starting to see the relationships between things. We're starting to look at sleep. We're starting to identify those unhelpful patterns. Then we've got someone else that we're involving to help us start to kickstart these better habits. Anything else that comes to mind as something that we should be thinking about?
Well, I think just looking at the things outside of nutrition. So when we talk about the primary and the secondary, looking at our work, our relationships at work, our teams. Are there things there that might be contributing to other things going wrong with our health or how we're feeling, our mood, how we're showing up? There might be things going on with kids, with partners, with husbands, with family, extended family, all of that. So it's not just focusing on the food side of things, but being honest with ourselves about what else is going on and what patterns am I stuck in. And there might be lots of excuses as to why, but just, I guess, acknowledging them and getting them on the table in terms of things that are happening that you're struggling with or that keep coming up, like you keep falling off the wagon. That's the hardest part, is getting all of that stuff out.
And the first thing I think about is sometimes you don't want to go home after work. And I know I touched on a bit of a sensitive area there, but that can be a catalyzer to why I'm at the pub late and why I put a preference towards work, and why it's easy for me to say yes to an interstate trip rather than declining it. Or that I've got some other concern that I'm taking care of when I'm saying yes instead of no, that doesn't work for me and my well-being. So we're not saying that everyone should turn down opportunities that come their way. What we are saying is really tuning into how life is showing up for you and how health and well-being relates to that, and asking yourself some different kinds of questions to reestablish what you think is work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I think Paula and Hayley, with this, our conversation is revealing, typically what we take for granted. One of the other areas to build on what you've just shared, Paula, some people might not want to go home. We get that. We understand that. But then there's the other side of it too, is that where we're sabotaging ourselves.
Yeah.
We know we have to change. We know that we perhaps have a bit of body shame or, feel guilty about something that's not working, but I'm avoiding it. I don't want to look at it. It's too damn hard, and I think for many of us have been there. But what we're starting to see now, particularly as organisations become more accountable, more fast-paced, more dynamic, is that people who aren't prepared to look at themselves are being flushed out.
Yeah.
They're being revealed. And, their identity becomes at risk then. And, but what I'm listening to from this here, it might not be psychological, it might be diet. It could be we could make simple changes to what seems like a very complex problem or concern for us. But if we just make a start, 500 mils of water with a little bit of, sea salt, having a healthy choice rather than not such a healthy choice in terms of what we eat could over time make the world a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I love about you is that you've gone through you've been vegan, you've been vegetarian, you've come back to whole foods, meats, everything, right? So you speak from experience. So I can advocate the benefits of being able to be in a conversation over time. We've been in this for 5 years, and even though we work at crazy paces, I think that it has been the basics that we've been able to retain based on your advice across the years. So thank you for that. And if other people are interested in understanding themselves at a deeper level, or they want to go on this journey or put their toe in the water, how do they contact you?
Yep. So the best way to contact me is probably through Instagram. It's at healthylivingco_, and you can message me through there. And then, we can have a chat about coaching programs and how that all works.
And it sounds like it's different for each human.
It's always an individual thing. Yes.
Awesome. And do you do that virtually primarily, Hayley, or do we need to be in Queensland?
No, absolutely not. Most of the time it's, people are in different states, so we can do, Skype, Zoom, phone, whatever works for people. So we try and make it that there's not an excuse. I've even been talking to people in the airport lounge when they're waiting to get on their flight. So you can always squeeze it in.
Awesome, Hayley.
That's right.
And so do you think that we'll see a world in the future where we all have a health coach? I mean, I think this is an area of opportunity that's yet to be harnessed inside organizations.
Oh, absolutely.
So this idea that, I'm feeling a little bit blah and I'm going to have my health coach come alongside and do a little assessment for me or tune me up in some way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got coaches at work for our work performance, and we've got, a lot of us have fitness coaches.
Where are the health coaches?
Exactly.
Yeah. We might be starting a new fad.
Yeah.
I hope so.
At
Well,
healthylivingco_.
Well, you're certainly on our books, Hayley.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Hayley, and thank you for bringing the beautiful boys in. They've been downstairs waiting patiently while we've been
Very
talking.
quietly.
They seem to be doing a good job down there.
Deep
Thank
gratitude.
you very much for having me.
And love the pink hair.
Love it. Thanks, Hayley.
Thanks, Hayley.
I think we're done.
How's that?
Yeah, that's
Sam, have you got everything you want?
everything.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
You have to clap at the end.